Hi friends, Shawna Klingerman here, and I am so excited to introduce you to my Blackout Book Abstract Acrylograph Patterns. This is a practice I started a few years ago when I was feeling especially stressed out and I needed something easy and soothing to do that still scratched that creative itch. So I pulled out my Blackout book and my acrylograph markers from Archer and Olive, and I started creating these patterns that ended up being one of my favorite practices that I return to again and again. To walking you through my process, but let me give you a heads up right now that I promise you it is not all that complicated. So come along with me, let's head over and get started. For this project, I am using a very loved Blackout book from Archer and Olive, and also a set of acrylograph paint pens. Today, I'm using the 0.7 tips from the Blossom collection. These bright colors are going to look so incredible on our black background. You're also going to need a surface, like maybe this blending palette, or just grab a random piece of scratch paper, or do what I do and grab a sticky note. That way you can stick it to the opposite side of the page while you work. Although these acrylograph patterns look really complex, the concept behind them is incredibly simple. Each pattern is designed around simple shapes. For example, this one, which is a rainbow, obviously, but it's based simply on this concept of an arc. Just a simple arc, and we build out from there. This concept is based on wavy lines. Lots of wavy lines, but it just starts with one, something like this. This pattern is probably my favorite, and I come back to some variation of this one again and again. But once again, it's not that complicated. It just comes down to creating some wobbly shapes, for starters, right on your page. And you'll see during this video how these shapes can become something much, much more interesting. This next example is kind of a combo of the last two, where you create kind of the edge of a wobbly circle, which also kind of does look like a wavy line. But by building out from this line, we can create something quite interesting, just like you can see on this page right here. Now that we've talked a little bit about concepts, it is time to open up to a fresh spread. And because the blank page is always the hardest part, we're going to go right back to our page of shapes. So first things first, we pick a color. I'm choosing this lovely purple. And then before we start drawing shapes with it, we need to make sure that the paint is flowing free. This is where I grab that handy Post-it, and I'm just testing my pen nib, making sure the ink flows before I put pen to page. And then without overthinking, I'm just going to start drawing some lines. I'm drawing several wobbly circles, a few of them going off the edge of the page that I'm working on. Just letting my lines be wobbly and imperfect. Moving as slowly as I need to when I'm trying to connect my lines and create a shape. As I work, you will notice me rotating my book. This helps me make sure that I have a surface to rest my wrist on, and it also helps me make sure that I'm not putting my hand on top of wet paint. Once you have enough shapes to feel like you have a good place to get started, we're going to go in and thicken our lines a bit. Thickening our lines does a few things. First, it makes each line a little bit heavier, giving it more visual impact. We can also thicken our lines to fix any mistakes, whether it's a curve that feels slightly off or part of your line that got a little messy. Just go ahead and thicken the line in the places that you want to change. By thickening different sides of a line, you can change an overall shape. You can also use this step just to smooth out any edges where your lines feel shaky or not quite straight. I truly believe that was the hardest part, friends. Now that we have our starter shapes, all we have to do is build. I personally love building these in rainbow order. So right here, I am grabbing my acrylographs and arranging them by color so that I know which color I want to use next. Now it is time to start building. What we're going to do is build out one color at a time from our starter shapes. Since I'm going outward, I'm going to go reverse rainbow order, which means I'm going to use this blue and I'm going to draw a line that's just slightly outside of my purple shape. As I'm working here, all that I'm thinking about really is space. I am trying to space this light blue line just about the same distance from the purple line all the way around my shape. You will notice that I work with really short line strokes here. I find that the shorter the line you draw, the easier it is to control. So go slowly and do one little section of your line at a time. Once we have created that initial second line, once again, we're going to go in and thicken and use this opportunity to fix any problems with our shape. Now that you get the idea, let's go ahead and add that second blue line to every single one of our purple shapes. Now it's time to come in with our next color, and you'll notice that I'm trying to create a little bit of additional space between this line and the last. One of the ways that I do that is by adding a few little dashes that will help guide me as I create my second line, because I find that the further the distance from the previous line, the more difficult it is to draw smoothly and keep it consistent as you go around your entire shape. You can see here that things are going to get interesting because this blue line is actually the correct distance between both shapes. We will see in just a moment what happens when we move on to that second shape. Once again, I'm thickening my lines, and this time I'm using that thickening especially to help resolve any issues with that wider space between those two blue lines. And now as we move on to that second shape, you'll see that our blue lines are going to connect, which is where this gets interesting because eventually all of our shapes are going to combine into one bigger abstract pattern. But first we have to keep drawing to finish out these shapes. Now that we have that color done, we are going to go ahead and go in with every color of the rainbow, building out one at a time until we've filled in the entire space on the outside of our shapes. Anytime we get to a space like this one, where our shapes start to interconnect, all you have to do is keep following the outline. The line we are following now has shifted from our original shape to where those darker blue lines connect. If we just follow those lines with a consistent spacing and a consistent line thickness, one by one by one, we're going to combine everything on our page into one single interconnected shape. As we speed through this, you'll notice that I thicken my line, and I also give myself a lot of permission to vary the spacing and the thickness of my lines as I see fit. This is about mindful, easy, creative practices, which means that I don't overthink about it. I just kind of let myself get in the zone and draw line by line by line by line until it feels done. I wanted to show you here really quick before we move on to our next color that although I did try to keep consistent line shapes and thicknesses, they are varied, they are wonky, but as you zoom out, you really can't see. So as you're working on your own lines, don't stress. Take it easy on yourself. It's going to look great in the end. As you can see, we are going in with our next color now. I think you can see the pattern. One color at a time, we're going to build out. This is my favorite part because now that we have 5 colors down, you can see how the space outside of our shapes is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Each layer gets quicker and easier because we have less and less space to fill. As you can see, we are finishing up our orange layer here, which means we only have a few outside spaces left to fill. For those final open spaces, you can really use your own judgment with how many layers to go and when to stop. I decided for now to just add one more layer of pink and kind of a thick, chunky line in just these 3 final spaces that it will fit. Now you can see that the open space on our page is actually inside of those original shapes that we drew. So it's time to start working backwards, drawing another rainbow, going inward this time. Once again, we are using the same techniques as before. We are using the previous line to space our next line, and we are thickening as we need to as we go. As you're watching me do this on hyperspeed, let me give you this disclaimer right now. These pages take me hours. This is not real speed, obviously, but just for perspective, usually I work on this sort of a page for days. I use it as a relaxing activity. I come back to it again and again, and 9 times out of 10, I do it on my couch. Oh my goodness, look at this. We are almost done. As you start to get to the center of your shapes, you get to decide what you want to do. Sometimes I leave some wide open spaces, and sometimes, like with this page, I fill it all the way in as much as I can. Play around with your own page and see what you like the best. I want you to make this your own. Okay, now that I've filled in all my shapes as much as I can, I see one more space that needs a little bit more. So I'm going to go rainbow order and add that purple right outside, or I guess it's inside now, of that pink space. And then just a smidge of blue, and we are done. There you have it, friends, my full process for creating an abstract acrylograph pattern in your blackout book. You can use the same techniques that we used in this video to create a whole variety of patterns. For example, this pattern here that I created on the facing page, as well as patterns like this one, and these ones. There are so many ways that you can play with this idea. If you would like more inspiration, head over to the link below at the Archer and Olive blog. I have a free printable for you with some more abstract shape ideas to get you started. Until next time, friends, keep creating and keep taking care of you.